Sure.
Um, so here the agenda today is to bring some value from all three perspectives: a holistic view from a real estate standpoint, from a financial mortgage standpoint, and from a lawyer standpoint. So I have myself, I have Mohit, and I have Navneet today joining us. This is just a quote on your screen right now that usually I like, and I read this a lot of times while I'm making important decisions, which says the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your decisions. Here is where I think we come in as experts for you guys in the industry, because we can help you make informed decisions. Now, agenda very, very quickly. We'll start off with some introductions. We'll talk about a few mistakes that first time home buyers make. And this is coming from a collective experience of more than 20 years between myself, Mohit, and Navneet. And as I said, we're going to be bringing all three perspectives and try to cover everything that we can here without deep diving much into any one particular area, because then we need at least 4 hours of your time. After we've covered the mistakes, we will go through what is called a real estate action plan, and we'll talk about what it is and why it's so important. We'll go through the process at a high level and make sure you understand the timelines and the different stages of the process. And then finally, the last 15 to 20 minutes, hopefully we'll keep for Q&A. Now, introductions. I am Shay Sharma. Most of you know me. Some of you are um, with me for the first time today. I'm a part of the Real Estate Center Canada team. We are a team of about 60 real estate salespeople all across the GTHA, the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. We do anywhere between 700 to 800 transactions every year, which is roughly about $1 billion in real estate transactions per year. I am joined today with by one of my dear friends, Mohit. Mohit, if I can quickly ask you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Shay. My name is Mohit Masand, and I work with DLC Affinity Mortgage Solutions. I am a mortgage agent level 2, and what I mean by that is I have access to all kinds of lenders. Uh, in terms of a quick summary of what I've been doing in the mortgage industry, I started in May of 2017. So I only recently completed 7 years in the industry, and I've closed just close to about 200 mortgage transactions and consulted over 835 clients in the interim. Affinity Mortgage Solutions is the fifth largest DLC brokerage in Canada as per the April numbers. And I have been DLC's top 2% mortgage agents across Canada consistently over the last few months. So that's just a quick introduction about myself. And we are also going to be joined by Navnit Dhillon. She is a real estate lawyer, and she's going to be telling us more about real estate in terms of the legal side of how a real estate transaction is looked at and eventually closed.
Thanks, Mohit. And Navneet is a shy girl. She did not have her headshot, hence it's not included. But she's going to be joining us very, very shortly, and she's going to be on video, so you'll get to see her beautiful face as well. Um, let's talk about the mistakes. Let's go right into it. Now, the very first mistake that we see most people making is not choosing the right people for the job, not having a power team. There's an old saying, and most of you might have heard it. It says, "You give me 6 hours to cut down a tree, I will spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe." Make sure you work with people who are working with sharpened axes, because these are the people who are going to go to battle for you when it comes to making a transaction. These are the people who should and will and have to work in your best interest, and they have to get you a good deal. So make sure you're working with people who have the right experience for the job. As much as I would like to think I'm the most important person in the whole transaction, in my humble opinion, I'm not. The most important person in the transaction is the person who gets the financing done, who gets the money. And guess what happens without money? That's absolutely right. Nothing happens without financing and money. So the most important person, in my humble opinion, is the mortgage advisor, which is Mr. Mohit Masand on the call today. Mohit, can you quickly explain what the role of a mortgage broker is essentially in the whole transaction?
The role that a mortgage advisor plays is to get you the best mortgage solution. Now, that would mean some of the best interest rates in the market, or it could mean the highest prepayment privileges, or it could also mean closing in a short period of time depending on your requirement. But in summary, getting you the best mortgage solution is what our job is.
Perfect. And how does it work? I mean, why should people come to you versus go to their own banks?
Correct. So a bank basically would only be able to offer you the solutions that they have. And God forbid, which tends to happen often, if you could not qualify with that bank, you'll have to then go to another bank's branch and start the process all over again. As compared to that, when someone works with someone like me, who's a mortgage agent, I have access to not only some of those banks that you would have gone into anyway, I have access to over 100 other lenders with over 100 different products. So when you come to me and you say, okay, this is my financial situation, I am able to shop it around 100 lenders and tell you that this very lender is going to be able to offer the best mortgage solution for your needs.
Great. And what are the charges for it? I feel many people, right at the start of the process, they want to know what are the costs involved because that's the scary part of the transaction. So what do you charge as your service?
So I get this question a lot of times as well. Thanks for bringing that up. But for most of my mortgage instances, there is absolutely no fees. I get
Hmm.
paid for by the bank, and I do not charge bank or the lender, and I do not charge the client in most situations.
So how do you get paid again?
I get paid by the lender.
By the lender. Gotcha. All right. And
So,
then it's me, the real
yeah.
estate salesperson or advisor or the realtor, whatever you want to call it. Now, essentially, we all work towards getting you the best deal,
Hmm.
right? So our job is, or my job specifically, is to get you the most bang for your buck, to get you the best house for the least amount of money possible. And how do I do that? I do that by keeping a keen eye on the market, keeping a pulse of the market, by having the right access to the data, information, statistics, trends, patterns. I mean, we all focus so much on data in all industries. Real estate is no different. We as professionals have to be at the top of our game, understanding the numbers every month to get you the best deal possible. Who else is important? A lawyer. A lawyer is kind of a glue, a liaison between, let's say, the buyer, the seller, the mortgage guy, the realtor, anybody else who is involved in the transaction. The lawyer takes them all together and gets us to the finish line, helps us get the closing done, get you the possession of the house. They also help you negotiate any last minute changes or discrepancies. Who else? Home inspector, because they are responsible for inspecting the home, make sure your furnace is working, your roof is fine, all the mechanicals, plumbing, electrical, everything is in order. Insurance providers. These days, you can't even close on properties without having a good home insurance before the closing. Movers and packers, because guess what? Now you've bought a house, you got to move. Contractors for any minor things that you have to get done within the house, upgrades, painting, landscaping, so on and so forth. You get the drift. Tradespeople, any electrical repairs, plumbing repairs, your heating and air conditioning experts. Concierge service. What is it? Concierge service is something that we've recently started. By recent, I mean 6 to 12 months, is where we give you access to all the experts that we personally work with. So let's say you need a plumber, you need a landscaper, an electrician, and this could be in the GTHA where most of our team is. Great. We would definitely have someone working there. Or even if you need someone in Timbuktu, Saskatchewan, still reach out. We might not have somebody who we worked with directly, but guess what? We have access to about 23,000 other tradespeople, realtors, I mean, within the Royal LePage umbrella that I work for. Somebody is definitely there in the market that you're searching in. So reach out, and anything you need related to real estate, tradespeople, anything, reach out and we'll have a contact for you. Let's talk about the second mistake. The first one, reminder, was not having a power team. Second, emotional decision making. The very first question I ask, or I like to ask the buyers, is you're buying because, remind me? And people give me all sorts of answers. Let me start off with a couple of good responses. There are a lot of good responses. Let me just give you a couple. So we are a couple and we're thinking about expanding our family, adding more members to it, and hence we need a bigger space and we need a space of our own. Perfect reason. Or we don't need that much space, but we're sitting with some cash and the appreciations in the GTHA area are amazing. So we want to get invested into the market so that we can also make our money work harder for us and get a hold of that appreciation in the coming few years. Great reason to buy. But people have other reasons as well. Some people are buying just because their friends, their colleagues, and their cousins are buying because they fall for FOMO, which is the fear of missing out. Trust me, it's not beyond us. We all might think we are the most practical people on the planet, but we deal with buyers on a daily basis and the kind of responses we get. It's very easy to make out why people are buying. Are they motivated for the right reasons? FOMO is not beyond any of us, not even us. In the trades, I mean. Type of house and neighborhood. Now, as a buyer, I need to buy a house which has to be a detached house in Streetsville, Mississauga. Perhaps why? Because my friends or my colleagues, anybody I know, is buying only detached houses and they are buying in a certain good, posh neighborhood. Again, don't fall for that. What you need to take care of or what you need to understand is your requirements and your budget. Stick to your requirements. If you're just a couple, if you need just two beds, one for yourself, one for any guests who might come over, your friends who want to crash after having a late night party, if a two-bedroom house is enough for you, then stick to it. You don't need to buy a detached in a posh neighborhood if that's not your requirement. Buy the house that fits your budget and meets your requirement. Let's talk about budget a little bit. Now, if you're a couple, let's say making anywhere from 150 to 300, and you qualify for, let's say, a $1.5 million house, I'm making this up hypothetically. Let's say you qualify for a $1.5 million house, but should you now buy a $1.5 million house? Absolutely not. Or absolutely yes. Absolutely yes, if that house alone or that budget alone meets your requirements. But if your requirements can be met by a two-bedroom condo in downtown Toronto, which should only cost you about 700K, then stick to 700K. You don't need to buy something which is worth $1.5 million. Next point, stomach the least amount of home possible. What does that mean? Two things I'll mention here. Start small. It's a step-by-step process. I know you have a perception of a dream house or your dream house in mind. Your first house is not going to be your dream house. Even your second or third might not be your dream house. It might be the fourth or the fifth house that actually might look closer to your dream house. Now, I know there is a small percentage of population, let me call them the less than 1%. Those people can actually buy a $3 million house as their first house, and kudos to them. But I will assume, maybe wrongly so, but I'll still go ahead and assume that most people on the call today do not fall under this category. So start small. I'll give you my own example. I started off with a one bedroom, made some money from it, invested it in a townhouse, stayed there for 4 years, made some money, invested that into a double car garage detached house. It's a process, guys. It's a process. It takes time. Don't add stress to your life by investing more than you should at the very first stage. Invest small, invest in the least amount of home possible, stick to your budget, stick to your requirements. Now, before I deep dive into this process, let's talk about timing the market. In the chat, please use the chat function here to answer a small question that I have for you guys. What's the best time to buy? What's the best time to get into the market? And Mohit, please, if I may request you to read out some of the responses that we're
Yeah,
getting.
don't worry. I'm tracking the chat.
Perfect. Guys, don't be shy. Come on. Give us a few responses. What's the best time to get into the market?
All right, we're waiting for your responses. What do you think?
We've got a shy audience today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope you weren't going to say yesterday, Shay, were you?
Sorry, say that again?
I hope you're not going to say yesterday was the best time to buy the property.
No, no,
Okay,
no, no.
thank you. Okay, so
All
yesterday is
right.
not the right answer if anyone was thinking of that. We're looking for other thoughts. When's the right time to get into the market? We have about 12 participants. I am very keen on answering. I want to see what Shay has to say, but then I'm going to wait for you to put your answers first.
Ajay, go ahead. Use the chat function, please. Tell us what you think. What's the best time to buy?
Let's see.
Do we have
So if
something?
we don't yet,
No
uh,
worries.
in the meantime, if you want, I'm going to take a guess and see what you think
Absolutely.
about
Go
it.
for it.
I would think the best time to buy a property or get into the market or try anything new is right now. That's
Right
my
now?
opinion. I don't know what you think.
Not really, Mohit. Sorry.
Okay.
I wish I could give you a prize right now, but not really. No. All right.
That's okay.
You know what the best time to enter the market is? It's when you're ready. Forget everything that anybody else is saying out there. The best time to get into the market is when you, as a buyer, are ready for making that move. Now, I'll be stupid if I say that any time is a good time when you are ready. Of course, that's not the case. If we look at the graph here, just be with me for a second. Now, this is the average change of prices in the GTA for the last 40 plus years, right from 1980. But actually, the data does not change even if we go back to the last 50, 60, even 100 years. These are the price changes year on year, every year in the last 40 years. Now you see the market goes down and it goes up and it goes down and it goes up. On average, the line that you see here, the brown line, is the average year-on-year appreciation that we've experienced in the market in the last 40 plus years, which is close to 7%, 6.73% to be exact. What this means is that on average, one year it could be minus 2%, the other it could be plus 13% year-on-year price appreciation. However, on average, we've seen 7%. So if you stick to the purchase long enough, for 7 to 10 years. Looking at this data, you're certain that you will be doubling your money in about a decade's time. We all know real estate goes up, down, upwards. So there are minor dips in real estate. I'm not going to be the guy who tells you real estate always goes up. No, it goes up and down, upwards. So over a longer time frame, over the span of let's say 7 to 10 years, real estate is bound to go upwards because that's how the market works. But we might have short dips. So if you stick to the property long enough, you will make money. But we can see from the graph that if we consider this brown line as the average appreciation, it would be beneficial for you to enter perhaps at this point versus this point. Make sense? Because when you're entering the market at this point, chances are you will get appreciations that will take you closer to 7% and beyond. But if you enter the market, let's say here, then the market is going down. So it might take, you might still make money, but you might take longer to make money. This is true. It's absolutely certain. However, this is secondary in my opinion. The best time for you to enter the market is when you are ready to make that move. Now, another thing is, why do people get burnt in real estate? I see people incurring losses in real estate, but why does it happen? It happens when people start speculating on real estate, when people get into a mindset wherein they think that real estate is only going to go up. There's no chance it can go down. Over the long run, it will go up. And that's almost a certainty because we have the last 100 years of data proving it. But in the short term, if you are somebody who thinks, okay, I'll invest in real estate today, since it's always goes up, I'll sell what I've bought today in about 12 to 18 months and I'll walk away with a bag of cash. Sorry, my friend, real estate is not for you. Please do not invest because now you're not an investor, but a speculator. So real estate is not somebody who likes to speculate, but somebody who can stick to an investment at least for 3 to 5 years so that they can give the market and themselves the chance to realize the full potential of that investment. What should you do instead? Now we've asked you to time the market, but then time yourself better. Then we've asked you not to speculate. What should you do instead so that you can take an informed decision? You should focus on number and stats. You should look at the months of inventory, and you should focus on demand and supply, all three of which we're going to cover in the next slides. Now, if there's one indicator, forget all the stats, and I'm going to show you some crazy stats today. We're not going to discuss them in detail, but I'm going to show you how much in-depth analysis we do on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, for us to be able to be abreast of the market. But if you don't want to look at anything because you don't like numbers, let's say, if there's just one indicator that you want to be looking at consistently to get a sense of the direction in which the market is going, this is it: months of inventory. Now, what is months of inventory? Months of inventory is this. Let's say the month of inventory right now is 1 month. It means if no new houses come to the market, it would perhaps take 1 month for all the houses available in the market to get sold. Let me repeat that. If no new houses come on the market, it will perhaps take 1 month for all the houses available in the market to get sold. There is, and what is inventory if you look at it? It's the supply. Economics 101, let's go back to it. What happens when the supply is high but the demand is low? Let me repeat. What happens when the supply is high? So let's say there are too many houses in the market for sale, but then the demand is low. There are not enough buyers. The prices should go down, right? Let's look at this graph here. This is April 2024 data. The gray line at the bottom is the semi-row and towns. The black line is the detached houses, and the blue is the condo market. The condo market has the highest level of inventory right now, which is a 3.5 months of inventory, which means if you were to buy condos today, you would perhaps get the best deal because the supply is high. There's more competition in the market when it comes to condos. There are more sellers in the market which are competing among themselves, and there are less buyers. So you have better deals to get. Let me put this in perspective. Let's look at detached houses in Mississauga over the last 2 to 3 years. And it doesn't matter if you look at detached houses or any other class in the real estate market, or you look at Mississauga or any other city. The data is going to suggest the same thing. This is just an example. January, February 2022, which was the peak of the market, the inventory for detached houses in Mississauga was 0.8 months. Oops, sorry. 0.8 months, row 1. Here you see, since the inventory was low, the prices were very, very high. It was almost 1.2 million, sorry, 2 million, 1.9 million. That continued for a couple months. Let's look at July 2022, which is 6 months hence. And now, mind you, we had started seeing interest rate hikes. After the interest rate hikes, the inventory jumped to 3.6 months, from 0.8 months to 3.6 months, and the prices went down from 1.96 million to 1.58 million. You see how the correlation is working? The inventory is going up, the prices are going down. Fast forward another year or so, May 2023, we have had more interest rate cuts. But there's something that happened in January 2023 was the Bank of Canada said that they're going to pause interest rates, because of which the inventory went down and the prices went up. 6 months after May 2023, what happened? In November 2023, we had more rate hikes. The inventory climbed to 4.1 months, the highest of the lot. Consequently, the prices also dropped from 1.9 million to 1.3 million, or 1.96 to almost 1.4. So you see how this correlation is working? As in when the inventory changes, the prices go in the opposite direction. I hope that makes sense. Now, let's look at the demand and supply. Let me pull out some demand indicators here. Now, this graph here shows you the number of sales. What are the number of sales? The transactions. What are the number of transactions? The buyers. So it shows you the number of transactions in April of every year from 2024 back to 2015. The blue line that you see going across the graph is the 10-year average. So every April for the last 10 years, on average, we've seen about 9,000 transactions happening. This April, however, in 2024 was a different story. There were only 7,000 odd transactions in the market, which means the demand is lower than the 10-year average. Let's look at the supply side of things. Similarly, this is the supply side of data for every April from 2024 back in chronology to 2015. Now, the blue line you see is on average number of active listings in the market, which is nothing but supply for the last 10 years. The number of active listings for the last 10 years on average was roughly 14,000. However, this April, the number of active listings were over 18,000. What is happening essentially? The number of transactions happening is lower, but the supply is higher. Where do you think the prices should go in the next few weeks? Mind you, this changes very, very frequently. It's not that, okay, it's good enough for me to say that for the rest of the year, the prices are going to go down. Absolutely not. It's only giving me a direction in which the market is going, and it will change in the next 2 to 4 weeks. I will have to go back to the drawing board and analyze these numbers again to make sure I'm giving my clients the right advice. But as far as this April data tells me, it tells me that the demand is low, the supply is high, the prices should either stagnate for a little while or go down slightly if the supply continues to increase. All right, now we've talked about what not to focus on, what to focus on in terms of some theory and some numbers. Let me take this a step further. GTA is a big market, right? We have so many cities in the GTA. But micro markets is something that are markets within a city. So GTA might have, let's call it 10 cities. However, there are more than 200 or even 250 micro markets in the GTA. What do I mean by that? I'll explain in a minute. Let's say you want to buy a house in Mississauga. Let's say, just as an example. So how we start the process, not the process really, because the process is much more in detail, but let's talk about Mississauga for a minute, just because you want to buy there. What we will look at, and this is very high level, we will look at the average sale price in Mississauga. We will look at the number of sales happening year to date. We'll see what is the average days on market. We will see and compare this data to the last 2 to 3 years to see how things are going. If condos is what you're interested in, we will analyze these numbers for condos. Again, we will look at the months of inventory because that dictates the market. So we discuss Mississauga as a whole. Is it helpful? Maybe, but honestly, it means shit. It means nothing. Where are you interested in buying? I know Mississauga, but where in Mississauga? What do I mean by that? Now, this red line you see here, this is the whole of Mississauga, this whole trapezoid here. But the blue polygons that you see in Mississauga are the different neighborhoods or the different communities in Mississauga. All of these behave differently. A Meadowvale is not going to behave, the same as a Clarkson. Each neighborhood is different because they have different locations, different amenities, different transits, different demography. If, let's say, for example, you are interested in buying in Erin Mills, Mississauga, just as an example, which is the small neighborhood here where you see a lot of activity happening. We are going to talk about Mississauga, but we're going to dig deep into the micro market, which is the Erin Mills market. And then we're going to talk about the last 30, 60, 90 days of data. And we're going to be looking at the number of sales, the active listings, the months of inventory, the average price, the days on market. And then what will change always is what's the buyer pool like? What is the demand? What is the supply? And we're going to churn all those numbers to effectively come up with the right strategy. So if you tell someone, a realtor perhaps, that, okay, I want to buy a house, and they say, okay, let's go look at some properties, not going to work. Or at least you're not going to be getting a good deal. That's something we know from experience. Now, I'm going to quickly share and just going to give you a quick glimpse of the kind of analysis that we do on a monthly basis. So this is the report. Most of you who are connected to me, you do get this report on a monthly basis in your inbox. But anybody who's new and has registered for this webinar, I am going to make sure that you start getting these reports. So we start off with a little summary in terms of what we've seen in the market happening. We talk about the demand indicators, the supply indicators, the price indicators. We go on to talk about the condo market in particular. We look at the months of inventory, we look at the price changes, we look at the sales to new listing ratio. I'm not going to go into detail of what each of these is, but I'm just trying to appreciate how deep we go into the data to come up with the right information. We see at the different segments of the market, so less than $1 million or $2 million plus, we then give you some nice takeaways that you can make sense of. I know deciphering numbers and statistics is not everybody's cup of tea, so we simplify it and we give you some nice clean bullets that you can read and get a sense of the market. So give this process the respect it deserves, guys. If you're working with someone, I don't care who, make sure they respect the process, make sure you respect the process, and give it its due in terms of working out the numbers for yourself for your own benefit. Now, as I said, I don't care who you work with, the pie is big enough for everyone. If you want to work with your friend or cousin who's doing, let's say, this on the side as a part-time gig, feel free. But be sure that they are not going to have a good pulse on the market, because they are in it for some extra money on the side. They might do one, two in their best year ever. They might do 3 or 4 deals when the market is really hot and everybody's buying and selling. But you can't expect the same level of competence. We all understand not all engineers are built the same, not all doctors are built the same. Similarly, not all mortgage guys and real estate people are built the same. Having said that, let's move on. I am going to hand it to my friend Mohit here at this point, and he is going to talk about a few things from the mortgage standpoint. Over to you, Mohit.
Thank you so much, Shay. All right, so that was fantastic. The first few slides that you had, Shay, and all the data that you got into it's so important. I can't emphasize on the importance of knowing your micro markets. You were talking about Mississauga. I live in Markham, and I know how things can change between a few kilometers from one place to the other. I have a street right opposite where I live, and I could see it here from my window. That market is completely different from where I am, because this is a completely different pocket. So thanks for sharing that. Now, coming to not knowing your numbers, and what we mean by that is, a lot of the times, especially with first time home buyers, but with people buying their other properties as well, they tend to come up with a budget based on what they think they're comfortable with. And that unfortunately is not how it works. It's very important that you understand your numbers in full detail. And for us to do that, what I tend to do is, the process I follow is, I set up something called a mortgage discovery call. And the objective of this call is for us to arrive at something we call a pre-qualification number, which basically is an understanding of what you would qualify for. So let's get into the details of what this call entails. Chef, you're able to get into the next pointers for me.
Yeah.
Thank you. So when it comes to the mortgage discovery call, we explore various different elements of your eligibility, and the first most important element of your eligibility is your income. When I tend to ask people, or they'd say, you know what, can you do my deal? I have bought a property, it's closing in a couple of weeks. I make $85,000, just as an example, and it's happened to me a few times. Can you still hear me, Shay? I see something weird happening on the screen. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, okay. I don't know why there's a separate Mohit Masand connecting on the screen. But anyway, so they'd say I make $85,000, but that actually is not the number. The real number is something else. And they were just giving me a number based on what they made last year, etc. So What we have to see is, let's say if you work a job, is it full time, is it part time, do you have any guaranteed number of hours, what's your hourly rate, is it a fixed income, do you have any variable component. I've had people who have come to me and be surprised by the fact that I qualified them for 75,000 or even $100,000 more mortgage as compared to what they got from somebody else. And the reason was that we were able to look or dive deep into what amount of income can we use as your qualifying income. So that's really the first thing that we do. Get into the history of what you've made, and various other components. The next thing, if you could go into the next point for me, Share, thank you, is we look at down payment sources and down payment requirement. So let's first, clear the air about this. What is the minimum required down payment, right? A lot of people get confused about that. If you wanted to access the chat, you can tell me what you think is the minimum down payment. But while you do that, I've done this before, and I was surprised when most people told me they believed that the minimum down payment required to buy a property was 20%. So you're buying something for $700,000. If you do not have $140,000, so sorry, you have to wait. But that's not how it works. The minimum down payment for an owner occupied property, and I'd emphasize on that because this could be a second property even, but as long as that property is going to be your owner occupied property, you're going to occupy it and not rent it out, the minimum down payment is 5% for the first $500,000 of property value, and 10% for any additional amount up to a maximum property value of 999 as soon as you hit a property value of $1 million or more, the minimum down payment in that case is 20% flat. However, if the property is under that, let's say you're buying a townhouse or a semi-detached and whatnot, as long as it's the max property value is 999, the minimum down payment is 5% for the first 500, 10% for any additional amount. So if I was to take a quick example here, let's say if you were buying something for $750,000, your minimum down payment is going to be $25,000 for the first 500, which is 5%, and $25,000 for the next 250, which is 10%. So your total minimum required down payment is $50,000 in that case. So that's how your down payment requirement works. And that also determines what your eligibility is. So your income may perhaps qualify you for a mortgage of 900, but you do not have enough down payment for 900, and we work with that. That's the first point. But we also explore the various available sources of down payment. Now, did you know? I guess everyone knows that you can, pull money from your savings, your checking, your mutual funds. But did you know, as first-time home buyers, you could withdraw money from your RRSP tax-free up to $60,000 per person, which means as long as the money is returned within 15 years. So there's obviously a disclaimer to that. But then you could withdraw up to $60,000 per person. If it was a couple, that means $120,000 from your RRSP tax-free. You could have money in your first-time home buyer savings account. You could have the money gifted to you from your immediate family member, be it within Canada or abroad, right? We can talk about that. And then lastly, down payment, as long as it works within your ratios, which we'd run, your down payment, a part of it could also be borrowed if you're comfortable with that. So, say you are in a situation where you've really liked the property, you've explored all sources of down payment, but you're shy of $10,000. As long as there's room in your ratios, I am able to let you borrow that money. It is a program available under various insurers, and we have to obviously discuss more details of that, but that is an available source of down payment too. With that being said, the next element that we look at is your credit. How important is your credit? It absolutely is very important because that is the method that the banks use to determine your credit worthiness. And what they're looking into is what kind of credit facilities have you had in the past, and how have you managed your credit facilities? Have you made your payments on time? Have you ever missed any payments? Do you have accumulated balances on your credit cards or line of credit? Because that also tells them a little bit about whether you've been able to manage your finances well or not. uh, but if you're a first time home buyer, or if you're new to the country, does that mean that you're out of the market? It doesn't, because there are various alternative sources of credit that can be explored as well. Be it your rent history here in Canada, if you're new to Canada, be it your utility bills, and if you do not have anything, we can even try and use your foreign credit bureau. So if someone's from India and if you have CIBIL, which is a TransUnion score, we are able to use that as a legitimate alternative source of credit, right? But there's another factor here. uh, so let's say, you've got a credit score here, but maybe you made a mistake. You missed a couple of payments in error, or some of your debts are in collection, or something's gone wrong. That also does not mean the end of the story, because every lender is flexible on credit requirements as long as there's a story that goes along with it. So I've had cases where someone had missed a Rogers bill, which accumulated over time. But the reason why they missed it is because they were contesting it. There was a Rogers bill for that month of $1,100 while they were traveling on a cruise. But they were like, I never turned on my phone. Why am I being charged roaming charges of $1,100? Whether they were right or not is not for me to arrive at. But the point is, that the bank understands that that does not reflect on the buyer's ability to work on their credit. And as long as the score is not affected a lot, they can still work with you. Even if there is something else a little more serious, there are ways in which we can work with you and help you improve your credit. And then we make certain assumptions about your subject property, as to how much is going to be the down payment, and things like those, right? So we can do that. uh, and then, based on that, we arrive at your pre-qualification. So we arrive at a pre-qualification number, and I'll send you an email. You are free to share that with Share and say, okay, here's what I've been qualified for: max mortgage amount, max property value. In terms of the process, once you've arrived at the pre-qualification number, you're good to start looking at properties. But I would ideally suggest that you take it a step forward and we do a pre-approval for you. How is that different? Pre-qualification is done at the initial mortgage discovery phase, whereas in terms of your pre-approval, it we get your documents after the fact, and we do a formal application to the lender, and you'll have a letter from the lender. Not only do you have that letter, it also locks your rate. So you would make sure, if the rates were to ever go up, you have locked your rates. But if they were to come down, then you can secure a lower rate. So that's done. Now, in terms of credit report, uh, if I have pulled your credit, I get this question a lot of the times. I am able to use the same credit report to send you to multiple lenders. So if I pulled a credit, I'm able to send it to multiple lenders with the same pull. And if it's within 30 days, I do not need to pull your credit again. So say I did a pre-approval for you today, and within 30 days you've bought a property, and we now have to do a formal firm approval for you. I can use the same credit report so that I'm not hitting it twice. And then one more thing that's important to know when it comes to knowing your numbers, very, very important though, is understanding your monthly carrying cost. And not only am I talking about your mortgage payments, I'm talking about your property tax payments, setting aside some miscellaneous, setting aside money for miscellaneous costs like repairs, maintenance fee, insurance, um, uh, internet bills. So we sit down, arrive at a budget, and see what would you be most comfortable with, and at least have you prepared for the purchase of your property. So the next part of that now is focusing too much on the shiny stuff. And I think there are two factors to that. There's a mortgage element to it, and there's a real estate element. Let's talk about the mortgage element first. The first point there is relying heavily on your bank. And what I mean by that is I get it a lot that I will go to my bank. uh, so you could be working with any of the banks, and you would believe that because you bank with them, you would get the best rate in the market. If experience is anything to go by, whether you bank with a certain bank or not, whether you even work with a certain bank or not, there are other lenders who may be able to offer you a better rate. So it's always a good idea to explore different options. Something that a mortgage agent can bring on the table. Not only can I shop with your bank, so as an example, you said, I work with Scotiabank, can you explore the best employee rate? I can do that as a mortgage agent. So not only can I do that, but I can also tell you, you know what, but maybe TD is offering a better solution right now, or maybe BMO is. So, or some non-banking institution. So don't rely too heavily on just your bank, assuming that they give you the best solution in the market. The next point after that is the brand. Now, like I mentioned, we have over 100 lenders that we've access to. And if you were to believe that brand is what really matters, It's not. There are so many times where non-banking institutions come up with solutions that are better than what your bank was offering. So if I were to give you an example, I recently did a renewal. The client was with one of the top 5 banks. He was renewing with them, and he was being offered a rate of prime minus 45. So that gives us 6.75. So once that was done, he arrived, he came to me, and he's like, I'm getting 6.75 from this bank. I'm very happy. Can you better that? Can you imagine the rate that I offered him? 6.15. But this was with a non-banking institution, because they just specialize in certain products and they could give you a better solution. So brand doesn't really mean anything. One thing to remember is that you aren't the one putting your money in there. They are the ones giving you the money. And as long as we are working with reputed players, we should still be fine as long as there's a good solution. Uh, Focusing too much on the interest rate is another mistake that people tend to make. Interest rate is absolutely important. Don't get me wrong. And we make sure that you do get the most competitive rate in the market. But focusing purely on interest rates could be a pitfall, because there's so many other factors. There could be so many other terms that could be deep into a mortgage approval that someone would perhaps not even tell you, and that could come back and become a problem for you in the future. So it's good to have like a holistic solution. That's something that we'll arrive at, which does include a good interest rate, but at the same time we're exploring other options as well. And then the last one here is keeping service second. I see that in various industries. I guess that applies to real estate as well. But on the mortgage side, you cannot deny the importance of service. And at the risk of sounding salesy, I'm sorry, that's my job. But when you work with a mortgage agent who does this for a living, just like Shay mentioned in the previous slide, we do this day in and day out, and this is how we put food on the table. We really value what we do, and we really value your relationship with us. So we go above and beyond in terms of service. And what does that mean? First, making sure to do everything to close your transaction. So if I have a client that has had a hiccup when we sent the documents, I would make sure that I'm working on it. That's number one. Secondly, once your mortgage transaction is closed, does it mean that you do not need your mortgage agent anymore? That's actually not true. From my experience, I've had most of my clients call me back within the next 12 to 18 months after closing for something or the other. I want to change my payment frequency. Can you help me get more money? Can you get me a home equity line of credit? Can I switch to another bank? Are there better rates on offer? I'm selling my property, moving to a new one. Can you help me port it? If you work with a mortgage agent, because I'm going to be here for life, this is my end game, I'm not going out of here, you get my service continuously, as compared to going to a bank, getting a mortgage, and suddenly realizing the next time you want them, the person is not there at the branch. They've either changed banks or they've been promoted. So keeping service second might turn out to be costly. So that's from my side of what happens when you focus too much on the shiny side of things. Let's see what Shay has to say about these.
Back to real estate. And one thing I will say is not all shiny objects are gold. Case in point here. Look at the pictures. What's the difference between the top two pictures? Absolutely nothing, just the fact it's a better picture quality wise, but it's a staged picture. Same with the bottom one. Same bedrooms, in fact, same beds. However, one is staged and the other is not. I mean, the first pictures, like on the left column, are our houses on a day-to-day basis. But what happens when you try and sell a house? The realtors would stage it so that it looks absolutely impeccable. But I am going to suggest something different here. If the staging is not good, great. If the owners have not made any cosmetic enhancements, wonderful. If you don't like the paint in the house because it's orange roof to floors, nothing can be better than that. If you don't like the color of the countertop, that's great. You know why? When I take my buyers into showings, I tell them to ignore anything that is aesthetic, that is cosmetic, that can be changed about the house. So if you walk into a house and it's not staged and it's ugly and the paint is coming off, it's a good thing. Why? Because now we have more negotiation room. We can use these points and negotiate the price, and you can get all of these things done very inexpensively. Plus, not many buyers will like the house. So you will have less competition. And what happens when you have less competition? You pay less. Let's take an example of a finished versus an unfinished basement. If you take a house with an unfinished basement, if you just want to use it for yourself, you can probably get it done in today's times with high inflation rates. You can probably get it done in about 30K, $30,000. However, when the seller finishes the basement for you, they expect you to pay more than that. They expect you to pay perhaps 60 or 70 grand for that. So if something does not look good, that means you have more negotiating power. That means you are better off. Now, I've told you what not to focus on. Let's quickly look at what to focus on. What's the old adage in real estate? Location, location, location. Always has been true, always will be true. Nothing matters more than location. When we look at location, what do we look at? We look at the infrastructure. Are there hospitals, parks, malls, other amenities? Is there transit? Is there a GO station nearby? Is there an LRT line? Is it near to subway, TTC? You look at all these things. In fact, there has been a recent study by the Harvard Business School, not recent, it was done perhaps in 2016, 2017. And what they proved, with numbers was that any property within 500 meters radius of a major transit hub always sees better appreciations and makes for a more stable market. You look at other amenities. Let's say you are big into working out. You are an enthusiast. You like doing jiu-jitsu. Are there other amenities closer to the area? Are there specific types of grocery stores that you desire and like? What are the neighborhood demographics like? When I say demographics, two things I focus on heavily is the education levels and income levels of a certain neighborhood. Because again, if the people around you are educated, they have high income, chances are that your neighborhood will sustain its value. You can look at the average age of a neighborhood, if that is something that's important for you. You can look at the number of households with kids and what age group do the kids fall into. You can look at the ethnicity, if that's something important for you. Again, your realtor should be able to pull out all this data from the municipal records and elsewhere and present it to you for you to be able to take that decision for yourself. You should focus on the overall layout and functionality of the house, the square footage, things that cannot be changed. You can't move a house and put it in a different neighborhood. You can't change the overall structure and layout of the house without burning a hole in your pocket. It can be done, but it's going to cost you maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you're better off buying a different house altogether. So if, for example, you need two workspaces in the house, make sure you get it. Make sure the kitchen and the family room are not a floor apart. So look at the overall functionality of the house. Look for what might become a day-to-day challenge for you. Look at the age of the house, because that is now directly related to the upkeep and maintenance of the house. Just like our body, the older the house is, the more maintenance and upkeep they require. Look at the rental potential from the house. If, let's say, you're spending about $1 million, let's call it, on a house, you might be looking for a rentable basement so that you can offset your mortgage payments by a couple $1,000s that you can get from the basement every month. Look at the structural integrity of the house, the mechanicals, the AC, the furnace, the roof. Look at all the big ticket items, because a furnace, AC, roof, these three things alone can cost you anywhere, let's say, between $15,000 and $30,000. So if the house you're buying has all these three things new, then you can pay slightly more. But if these things are old, then you want to factor in for all those changes coming up in the next few years, and you might want to curtail on the price that you are offering for the house. Look at the future resale value. Don't just judge the usability and the functionality of the house for yourself. Don't just judge the location and neighborhood for yourself, but also for future buyers, because there will come a point where you might be in a seller's shoes. So look at the future resale value of the house as well. Look at the maintenance fees, and this is particularly important for condos. Now, let's say there are two condos, one worth 500K, the other worth 650. The only difference between the two is the maintenance fees, hence the price. Now, again, maintenance fees and price are inversely correlated. The higher the maintenance fees, the lower the price. So let's say you buy the same condo for 500 just because it was cheaper, but the maintenance fees was $900. But the same condo which was worth 650, the maintenance fees was 350. Now, over the next few years, what's going to happen is that $900 maintenance fees is going to go up steadily with time, 2 to 4% at a minimum every year, if the building has certain issues, which it might because it's an older building with higher maintenance fees. The maintenance fees might take a huge jump, at which point it would make for a bad investment. You will not be able to sell it, or you might not be able to sell that unit at the fair market appreciation value. You would definitely not have as much appreciation on this unit as you would have on the other unit, because this unit has a very, very high maintenance cost. Now, I'm going to hand it over to Navneet to give a quick introduction and then talk about the next few points from a legal standpoint.
Hi, everyone. My name is Navnit Dhillon, and I have my own real estate practice in Mississauga. And so today she has invited me to share my perspective or my experience on what I see buyers, the 5 mistakes that I see buyers make all the time. So I'll start with number one, which is not including the repairs or issues in the agreement purchase and sale, which we call APS, and accepting verbal promises, which is not acceptable because it is not a binding contract when you have somebody just promise something to you. And so just to give you an example, I had a client purchase a property in the summer last year, and they walked into the home, and second, the basement was being completed as a separate legal apartment. A lot of work needed to be done, and the seller said, no problem, we'll have everything done for you prior to closing. Unfortunately, this was not noted in the agreement. Come closing time, nothing has been done. We went back and forth for months and months and really did not have a legal leg to stand on because nothing was in writing. It was simply the seller and the listing realtor who had, in casual conversation said, don't worry, everything will be done for you. Again, was not, and my clients did not really have any options available to them. So really, really important to have anything, even small, put into the agreement. It's there to protect you so that you have recourse available to you in the future. Number two here is this common myth that buyers have, that there is some 48-hour rule that they can report on any issues that they find in the property. That is not true. Really, I really usually recommend clients to go into the property on the day before closing, very shortly before closing, so that they can assess any damage that's done to the property, look at all the appliances, make sure they're working, so that they have a good idea beforehand. And so we can negotiate, do a holdback, get reimbursed. So many options available prior to closing. Unfortunately, after closing, we're really there at the mercy of the seller on whether in good faith they want to reimburse you or repair the issue, or if they want to be difficult and just put their hands up and say, everything was fine when I left, this is on you. At that point, really your options are to take the seller to small claims, again, depending on the value of the issue. And you have to, the onus is on you to prove that the defect was not pre-existing, and that can be difficult at times. So really urge buyers to go in for a showing closer to closing. Don't go a month, 2 months in advance, because you're not going to know what the state of the property is on closing. Number three here is, and again, Shay and Mohit both touched on this, work with an experienced realtor. I know in this day and age, we all have a friend or a relative that's a realtor. We may get some sort of cashback deal, whatever the reason may be. But really, we want to work with somebody with experience, somebody with knowledge, because that's going to save you money. And that, in the end of the day, in my experience, and I've been doing this for more than 12 years, I see it all the time. I see, unfortunately, realtors who don't have the knowledge, who are doing it as part-time, and they just simply think their job is to write an agreement of purchase and call it a day. There's much more to it. There's the experience of negotiating. There's things that you know through experience, what you can and what you cannot do. For example, if there's a contract that can be assumed, it's not necessary that it has to be assumed. A realtor will know that they can maybe negotiate that the seller buy off the piece of equipment. Therefore, the buyer is not paying a monthly rental fee. That's just one thing. On the sale side, I've had, one example, I've had an agent forget or miss that there was a survey requirement from the seller. On closing, seller did not have a survey. He failed to see this requirement himself. And unfortunately, on closing, because my client did not have a survey to provide, but it was required as per the agreement of purchase and sale, was on the hook for $3,500 so that the buyers could then go in themselves and get a survey after the fact. Again, not a happy moment for the seller. Another example that I can think of is solar panels. It was an assumption that they would take it over. Again, seller did not realize this. Time of closing, this was a $50,000 compensation to the buyer. 50,000, really big amount, not happy parties. And again, this was my experience. This was because the realtor had failed to realize what this actually meant to the seller. Okay, moving along to number 4. I recommend not skipping on a home inspection. I know some people will say there's really no point in getting it done. And of course, it depends on the market that we're in as well. It's a really hot market. Buyers want to go in without any conditions. But in those markets, not only are you paying more, by maybe 50 or 100,000 more than you should be for the property, you may also end up with another $50,000 you're putting out of your pocket because of issues that you've encountered in the home that perhaps an inspection could have avoided. The last point I have here is setting a realistic closing date. This is an issue that is really, it irks me personally because I'm dealing with this all the time. Clients who, will set a closing date 30 days from the agreement purchase and sale signing. That's not enough time. Sometimes there's not enough time for the mortgage broker to get involved, get an approval, get all the conditions fulfilled, have the bank instruct the lawyer, and have the lawyer then to do and complete the closing. Sometimes I get instructions on the day of closing. I cannot tell you how difficult it is for us to turn around documents and, give clients the amount of funds that are required on closing. We're all scrambling then. And this is how mistakes are made, not only by, that they're lawyers, but also by clients themselves. And we don't want to rush. This is a really important, I want to say the largest purchase you're going to make in your life. You want to make sure that there's no mistake made. There's, don't leave any room for error. Give yourself plenty of time. I would say give yourself 3 months, right? Don't do these quick 2-week closing dates. Again, mistakes can be made and we want to avoid them.
Thank you so much, Navneet. That was really helpful. Let's quickly touch upon now, what do we do with all this information? Now, essentially what it gets down to is a real estate action plan. Before we talk about what that is, let me say all this information that we've gone through so far was pretty generic. It holds true for everybody on the call today, but the solution that we will come up with is not a one-size-fits-all solution. It never is. So for us to be able to help you, we have to understand your personal and financial situation. So what we do is what we call a financial checkup from the neck up. It's a real estate action plan. Essentially what it is a 20 to 30 minute free Zoom call wherein we get to know you, we get to what you're trying to accomplish long-term in real estate, and then we see how we might be able to help you. And I emphasize on the word might because the fact is we can't help everyone. If we talk and we understand that yes, we are a fit, we move on to the next step, which is creating an actionable and quantifiable plan for you. Now, I understand not everybody is ready to buy and sell today. Some people might be okay to get started right away. Some people might need 6 months, others might need 3 years. Whatever your timeline looks like, a real estate action plan is something that works for you because we create an actionable and quantifiable plan that we then have you discuss with us every 3 to 6 months as part of the accountability sessions that we hold with you to make sure that you're sticking to the plan that we discussed. Now, once we've had a real estate action plan, let's look at the process very, very quickly. So we've had the first step, which is called a real estate action plan, in which we got to know more about your long-term goals and what you're trying to accomplish. Then I would pass on that information to Mohit. And Mohit, what happens at this point? If you can explain just in a few seconds.
Absolutely. So once we have that, like I explained in the previous slides as well, that once the action plan has been created and Shay forwards that to me, I would set up a discovery call with you where we'll understand your qualification. We'll do a pre qualification. Hopefully, we'll move on to the next stage of having a rate hold. And we'll also make sure that we familiarize you with the process. I'm pretty sure that Share would take you through what happens on the real estate side when you're buying expectations. I tend to make sure that during that call, we set your expectation on what to expect on the mortgage side in terms of mortgage conditions and what to expect in terms of timelines as well.
Great.
Back to
Thank
you,
you,
Shin.
Mohit. So essentially, now once Mohit has worked with you and you're qualified and you have a pre-approval, what we do on the real estate side is we start going and we start looking at properties. Now, I don't expect you to know anything about any property at this point because I understand you're a first time buyer. So for the first 10, 15, maybe 30 houses, we don't even discuss price. Why? Because let's say by understanding your qualification process and requirements, now we know that a townhouse is what you're looking for. But as a first time buyer, do you know the difference between a condo townhouse versus a townhouse with a portal fees, or a freehold townhouse, a two-story versus a three-story townhouse? No. So it's my job as a professional to take you on an exploration phase wherein I show you all the options out there that are available and meet your budget and requirements. Once I have the confidence that yes, I've shown you everything that's available out there meeting your requirements, that is when we get serious about starting to put in any offers. So again, for the first 15 to 20 houses, we don't talk about the price, and I will never ask the question, are you ready to put the offer now? It's not going to happen. All right. So now that we are serious and we start putting an offer, your fifth offer can get accepted or your 25th offer can get accepted. That might take its own sweet time. Let's call it another month. So roughly, we've spent 2 months now looking at houses. The first month was just exploration. The second month is when we started putting in offers. So from an overall timeline perspective, your pre-qualification with Mohit could take anywhere between a week or two. Your time with the real estate advisor might take another couple of months for you to have an accepted offer. Now, after you have an accepted offer, how do we get the financing done, Mohit?
Correct. So if you've already done the pre-approval, when your offer gets accepted, and what I ideally like everyone to do when I was talking about service, I should have added this point, is if you've spoken with me before, we've done your pre-approval, pre-qualification. Every time you put an offer, I insist that you speak with me because your qualification can change based on the specifics of the property, be it the property tax or the maintenance fee. So I'm assuming now that your offer has been accepted, we've already spoken to each other. I know that you put in an offer, so I'm in the know. And as soon as that's done, we start working on your approval process. Given that your offer has been accepted, we send in an application to the bank. It so the application process could take up to about 2 days. The reason for that is at this stage, I would like to have a conversation with you about the various terms that the banks offer, whether you like a fixed term or a variable term. And I want to make sure that you're making an educated decision on what term to go with. Then we'll talk about amortization and tons of other things and select a lender based on that. Send the application in, and we should have an approval within a week's time. An approval generally is always conditional, and the most general conditions that I see on approvals is number one, sign commitment. So you're getting an approval letter, the bank wants you to sign it, or a void check to see where would the payment for the mortgage be going out from once it's done. If there's an appraisal required, then that could be outstanding as well. So generally what I like to do on my side of things is all the major conditions like your income and subject property, etc., are satisfied right up front when we get that approval within a week's time. But after that, we can gradually satisfy the rest. You could also have your down payment condition outstanding, and that's only because if you are a first time home buyer, I've seen a lot of the buyers accumulate their down payment even while or even after they've got their offer accepted, uh, which you could do up to about 15 days before closing. So if you've not accumulated all of your down payment yet, I'm happy to let you wait it out and accumulate it with your salary, etc., and then say about 15 days before closing we wrap that up. And once all your conditions are satisfied, we get the deal instructed over to the lawyer, who will then create a package like Navneet was talking about. And ideally, that happens in the last week to 2 weeks, where the lawyer will create a package, call you in for signing. And once that's done and the deal gets funded on the day of closing, the lawyer will transfer the funds over to the seller, and you should ideally have the keys in your hands by late afternoon, is really how the process looks.
And congratulations, you just bought your first place.
Exactly.
All right. If this was helpful, here's a QR code. Again, we're not booking a real estate action plan at this point. It's just a code for you to get any questions answered with us. Go scan this QR code, go on the link, and it'll help you book a 15-minute call with us just so that we can answer any questions that you might have that you might not want to bring up on this call because we understand it's a public forum. If there's anything one-on-one you want to speak about, here's the QR code for you to get on a 15-minute call with us. And open to questions now. Feel free to use the chat function. Any questions you have at this point, we are happy to go through them.
Awesome. All right. I'll keep a check on the chat box for you, Shay, and I'll let you know. All right. Anybody, any questions that you have, anything that you'd like to ask us? It could range from anything that we talked about, or even if it's outside of the purview of what we spoke. And as long as it relates to real estate and mortgages, we are here to help you.
We couldn't have done that good a job.
Yeah, I
That there are
think you
no
did a
questions at
fantastic
this
job.
point. We're not that good, guys.
Either that or the chat box isn't working properly for people. You can, if there's any issue with the chat box, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask your question at this stage.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be able to unmute themselves, but yes, chat should work.
All right,
Let me
so
try.
all right, someone typed in. Is that you? Oh, that's
I
you.
did.
Of course.
Yes.
Okay.
Just
So
want
the
to make
chat's
wanted
working.
to make
Okay.
sure that it's working.
All right. So we can
Seems we
stay
did
for a
do a
couple
very good
minutes
job.
longer to see if
Yes.
someone has a question. Don't be shy. Feel free to put your question in the chat box, and we'll be happy to answer.
Or we completely understand if you don't want to talk now, but you want to have a one-on-one discussion and get your questions answered in private, hence
Yeah,
the
that's
QR
fine with
code.
us as well.
Yeah, either ways, we're okay.
Awesome.
So we'll give it another minute,
Yeah,
perhaps.
exactly.
Looks like we were very good today. No doubt about it.
We did fantastic.
Talk about
Awesome.
pumping your own tires.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
All right, perfect. I think, Mohit, thank you so much for being on the call today. I hope
Oh,
we were able to bring some value to you. Oh, Andy raised
yeah,
his hand.
Andy raised his hand.
So
Yeah.
let me stop sharing and let me go try to unmute Andy. Andy, you're allowed to talk, my friend. Go for it.
Yeah, so just wanted to know if there's any, what's the difference between a PR holder versus non-PR holder?
Okay, let me answer it in very simple words. Nothing. As far as buying a house is concerned, there is absolutely no difference. If you talk about voting rights, that's a different story altogether. But buying a house, there is no difference. I bought my first two houses. I didn't have them at the same time, but one and then the second after I sold off the first one while I was still on a PR. While I was still a permanent resident, I became a citizen much later.
I think Shay, what Andy meant to ask was PR versus work permit. Is that right, Andy? Was that your question?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, I think what he meant
Oh,
was, is
got
there a
it.
difference between being a resident and not being a resident with
Got
the process and your eligibility?
it. Got
You
it.
want to
Got it.
go at it first, Shay, and then I can talk about the mortgage side of things.
Absolutely. And Akshay, we are going to come to you after this one. So if you have a PR, everything's straight. You can purchase a house, no problem. But when you're on a work permit, you're still considered a foreign buyer.
Hmm.
And if you remember last year, there was a ban on foreign buyers. Individual foreign buyers, foreign corporations can still buy. There are always workarounds with that. But foreign buyers are not allowed to buy right now, which is what you are on a work permit. Earlier, they had the speculation tax, which was you pay an addition 20, 25% in tax, which you could claim back from the government had you, got your PR in the next 3 to 4 years timeline. Now it applies no more, at least for the time being. We don't know if that law will, see any changes in the next couple of years. But for now, if you are on work permit, you are a foreign buyer and you cannot buy.
Perfect.
Yeah, thanks, Shay.
No worries, brother.
All
All right,
right,
Akshay,
Akshay.
go for it.
Hey, can you hear me firstly?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Okay, firstly, I'm sorry, my chat is disabled, so that's why I couldn't get my question in there.
Oh,
that's
my
fine.
apologies for that.
So I know you touched a bit on credit when you're not in Canada. So like personally, at least for me, so I've been working and staying in the US for the past 5, 6 years. So obviously I have credit here, but no credit there, and it's not exactly transferable, but I know we can get credit reports from here as well. So in that case, would it be wise to just take that credit report first and then move when I am planning to move there and do everything? Because even those credit reports would have some validity, right?
Hmm. Uh, I guess that's a question for me, right? Shay, I can answer that.
Yes.
Awesome. So, Akshay, thanks for the question. Now, in terms of your credit report, there is no harm in pulling your credit report right now. It certainly has some validity, but when it comes to arranging a mortgage for you, we are able to pull credit from the states as well. So, Canada and USA have ties, and they work together on a lot of things, which includes credit as well. So I will be required to pull an industrial Equifax report from the states, which I'm able to do for you if required. And what I mean by an industrial report is the report that we see on our end, and it's very different from the report you would pull.
Okay,
Does
perfect.
does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Awesome. So it's anyone else, feel free to raise your hand. Uh, or I guess they're able to unmute
Speak
themselves
now
now, right?
or forever hold your truth.
Yeah.
All right, I guess we're free to go now.
Yeah, it seems
All
so.
right, guys. Thank you so much for joining. I hope we were able to bring some value. I will be in touch with all of you individually just to make sure, that if you have any questions, we can handle it on a one-to-one basis. Mohit,
Absolutely.
thank you again, my man, for joining in.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Love presenting with you. I think we make a great team, and yeah, let's do that more often.
Sure thing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Take care, guys.
Take care.
Have a good night and a good
Good night.
weekend.
Bye.
Bye.